Okay, question. How does fasting affect hormone levels? Okay, great. There are three hormones in particular that are very much influenced by intermittent fasting that I'm going to talk in more detail about. They are insulin, ghrelin, and leptin. So we're going to start with insulin. Insulin is this master hormone, it's a transport hormone. When we eat, specifically when we eat carbohydrate, and to a lesser extent when we eat protein, insulin levels rise to drive those nutrients into the cells. In the case of carbohydrate, you get the largest insulin response from carbohydrate or meals containing carbohydrate. And its primary purpose is to first drive it into storage in the form of glycogen in the liver. If the liver is full, it goes into muscle glycogen. If the muscle is full, it gets stored as body fat. So, with fat, on a side note, fat doesn't require insulin to be transported. But when you eat dietary fat, it's either burned immediately as energy or it's stored as body fat. So that's one reason why you don't have a free pass to eat as much fat as you possibly can. Protein, on the other hand, it does get shuttled into the cells, but it's not used as an energy source there. It just becomes part of the cell structure, incorporated into the tissue. So it's more of a repair and building type material. But that does require some insulin to make that happen. Now, insulin in and of itself is not the boogeyman. It's not a terrible thing. Without insulin, we would die. Talk to a type 1 diabetic who hasn't taken an insulin shot, not producing any insulin, and they'll tell you that's not a very happy place to be. So insulin is important, and high insulin level is not necessarily a bad thing, but chronically elevated insulin levels are a terrible thing. We're not designed to have insulin levels sky high all the time. Frequent eating, frequent carbohydrate intake, too much carbohydrate over a long period of time is the root mechanism of type 2 diabetes, and we want to prevent that at all costs. So we don't want chronically elevated insulin levels. We just want to spike it and we want it to come right back down. You can do that with a carb cycling type approach or cyclical ketogenic diet like the Reshape diet. That just has carb meals a couple of times on the weekend. So 80% of the time you're in a very low carbohydrate state, but you don't lose your sensitivity to carbohydrate. You provide some on a cycling basis to refill that muscle glycogen to prepare for future activity. So yes, insulin is, by the way, an anabolic hormone. That means building up. So we can't really build muscle without the presence of insulin. I want to state that it's not the problem. Controlling it is going to be the solution, though. And that's something that intermittent fasting can definitely do for you. It brings your insulin levels down. So your insulin is low, starting about 4 hours after a meal, 8 to 12 hours after a meal, it gets to baseline. 12 is the starting point of what we would consider a fast. People are usually going to break their fast after that 12. If they even go that far, they may go 8 or 12 hours overnight while sleeping and immediately raise their insulin levels again, and then the whole cycle begins over again. So by starting your intermittent fast in the evening, maybe an hour or two before bed, fasting overnight, a few hours into the next day, you're basically prolonging that fasted state when your insulin levels are very low. When insulin is low, you're going to be able to burn more body fat. So not only that, insulin is your part of your appetite signaling. We're going to get to the next one here in a second. But with low insulin levels, you're not going to be as hungry. Another thing that high insulin does is it creates this kind of brain fog. So a lot of people say intermittent fasting is good for helping with concentration that they wouldn't have otherwise. The irritability, the hangriness that can happen from that high and low sugar spike and sugar crash, blood sugar being all over the place like that, and just the hunger that comes after the blood sugar drops. Those are all things that we're addressing through nutrition. I'd have to say intermittent fasting is part of our nutrition protocol, even though it is the absence of nutrition, but that's an important concept to grasp as well. Okay, next up, we got ghrelin. Ghrelin is the hunger hormone, the hunger hormone. That is when your stomach growls, when you have that signal that you're hungry. Well, researchers have discovered, and I've verified this through my own intermittent fasting experiments, that ghrelin spikes on a predictable schedule around the times that you normally eat. It's almost like your body is just reminding you, hey, you usually eat around this time. Ghrelin, or that stomach growling, is not a signal that it's imperative to eat, that you'll starve to death if you don't eat something. A lot of people treat it like that's the case. But again, now, if you have blood sugar sensitivity issues, this is not medical advice. Follow your common sense. If you think you're going to pass out without a meal or something like that, go ahead and eat. But the purpose of the fat adapted strength training, or fast track, is to try to wean you off of that glucose dependency, where you have a low energy, low output when carbohydrate's not in your system. You should be able to function without frequent carbohydrate. It's a sign of an impaired metabolism if you can't. So it's almost like kind of a withdrawal symptom, as if you were addicted to glucose or carbohydrate, which is kind of the case for a lot of people. So working towards dealing with your body's preferred energy source is one of the outcomes of this program. But yeah, ghrelin. So that's one of the things that fasting, intermittent fasting specifically, did for me. It let me recognize that that hunger signal is not that serious, and that I can just override that, find something else to do, drink some water, go for a walk, whatever. That whole hunger situation goes away within about 20 minutes because your body just taps into stored body fat. So rather than looking at that first little stomach growling as, oh no, I got to eat or something terrible is going to happen, recognize that that's your body's way of saying, hey, you're tapping into stored body fat. You better eat, because your body wants to hoard that body fat. It does not want to give it up. I've said this before, but it bears repeating here. We are fighting our survival instincts by trying to do things to increase or maintain muscle mass or decrease body fat. Your body does not want to hold any more muscle than it needs to, and it does not want to have less body fat than it's comfortable with. So that is your set point for your metabolism. The amount of body fat that you currently have, that's your set point. And it's just like the thermostat in the room. You turn it down, it gets too hot, the air comes on, it gets too cold, the heat comes on to bring it back to where it is. That's homeostasis. Our body is always trying to maintain those internal conditions. It wants to keep everything just like it is. It sees extra muscle as a liability, especially if you're not bringing in enough energy or calories throughout the day. That's threatening to survival. So your body thinks it's going to be more inclined to break down muscle tissue to slow down the energy expenditure. So intermittent fasting has been proposed that it's better at preserving muscle versus straight calorie restriction, where you're eating more often but in smaller amounts, just because there are some other hormones at play. I'm not really sure exactly what they are off the top of my head, but those are good at preserving muscle mass in a famine type situation. Because you have to understand, when you miss a meal or two, your body thinks, well, this could mean there's a famine. There was a lot of food coming in. Now there's not a lot of food coming in. So it's going to try to slow you down to conserve energy. It's kind of like when you're running low on gas and you're trying to get to the gas station. You turn the air conditioning down, you coast downhill, you turn the radio off, you turn the windshield wipers off, you do everything you can to run as little amount of power as you possibly have to, hoping you're going to get to the gas station before you run out of gas. Your body's the same way. You got less fuel coming in, it's going to try to conserve energy. And one of the best ways it can do that is to dump that muscle, especially if you're not using it. So that's why weight training is very important in a weight loss program, so that the weight you lose is going to be primarily body fat and not muscle. We want to send a strong signal to the body that that muscle is important. Hold on to it at all costs. And you want to burn fat, not muscle. You want to lose fat, not lose weight. Okay, there's a difference between the two. So ghrelin, yeah, I was easily able to overcome that by incorporating some intermittent fasting. So that's kind of the legacy of what intermittent fasting has done for me. It's given me that strength and ability to know that this is not a dire situation. I can just wait till the next meal, no harm done. Okay, I think that's enough for today. I'm going to close this video out. Keep the comments coming. If you have questions or topics I can answer on a future episode, please let me know. And until next time, stay strong and enjoy the journey.